Good afternoon. I'm Clint Davies from the firm of Berry Dunn, and I'm here with my colleagues today, which we'll introduce in just a moment. But the subject of this town hall forum really is around information technology at the university. So this is the very first week for us being on site at the campus, undertaking a project which is going to be occur over much of this year. And this is a project around information technology, both assessing technology at the university and then developing a IT master plan for the university going forward. So the purpose of this is really to introduce the project, but also more importantly for us to begin hearing from the university community. So we've been on campus for this week doing a lot of interviews, a lot of small group sessions. A few of you have been in some of those interviews and sessions, so thank you for that participation. This is one of several different open forums that we're having around this subject. So our purpose here today is to explain this project a little bit, give you a high-level overview about this project, and then to get your input and discussion. So let me flip to our agenda here, and you can see that, but I can't. So let's see. We'll try that. Try to do this without breaking anything. So we're going to cover a little bit about the project background. We're actually going to hear from one of our two sponsors of the project. In just a moment, we're going to talk about a high-level overview, what the components of the project entail, talk a little bit about project communications, and some of our work on site. So that, in a quick nutshell, is our agenda for this session. As I said, most of our time is going to be in discussion, and so one of our team members is going to be going around with a microphone. And in fact, maybe it would make sense really quickly for me to introduce the rest of our team members and then turn it over to Beth, who's going to share some thoughts from her perspective. So right in front of me here is Dave Houle. He's our project manager, and you're going to see him a fair amount. We have Amy Tatu, who is one of our consultants on the team. She's also the person with the mic, so she'll be going around the room here in just a minute. And then Vienna Morrill, who is one of our senior consultants, who is also, you'll see quite a bit of her in this project. Together, our team has been doing a lot of work around in higher education. And just so you have a quick background on our firm, we are an independent and objective management consulting and accounting firm. Our focus as a team is really higher education. So we've been doing projects like this for a number of years now with various universities and colleges around the country. It's really given us a very good exposure to higher education and to a lot of different university environments. We always learn something in every project that we do, and I think we bring some of that experience and perspective that we've gained to our work and our projects. So that's a little bit about introductions to us and our project. And Beth, are we able to call on you to give us some perspective?
Sure. Is mic working? Do I need that?
You need to hear that for the. Yes, that's right. But we can turn it a little bit if you want.
That's okay. Well, that's not going to help. What can I say?
Go.
Thanks to everybody for coming out today. We appreciate your making the time to engage in this conversation about a really important project here on campus. Let me put this a little bit in context. We are doing something that relatively few universities in the greater higher education spectrum have actually done, which is a stem to stern analysis of how we use information technology resources. We are certainly not the first to do it. This firm has done really more than anybody that we found. And trust me, we had a rigorous, some would call grueling, selection process to result in the selection of this firm. So we're pretty familiar with what's been done nationally relative to a comprehensive assessment of information technology. There are lots of reasons why now is the time to do this. They come at a point when we, if you will, survived the Great Recession, but there is no great hope of an infusion of cash in order to have more or better or more reliable information technology services, or frankly anything else for that matter. And to the degree to which we want more or better information technology services, if we don't have an infusion of cash, it will come as a if you will, as a movement of resources from other areas into information technology. So there are lots of reasons why we need to step back and look at this point in time on what we're doing. We also, like most institutions in higher education, have an interesting IT history. It is one largely of relatively under-resourced central information technology, and therefore decentralized information technology organizations evolved in order to provide services needed to many parts of campus. Actually, when you look at the data, we're actually a tad bit more centralized than many IT organizations when you look at total spend in higher education and IT. But we still have a history, and it's actually not that long in the making in terms of the impact that IT has on our organizations. Joan Lorden and I are the co-chairs of the steering committee. We're the co-sponsors of this project. It has been a long time in the making. It comes after the Education Advisory Board took a comprehensive look at information technology in higher education, and we were a part of those conversations. It comes after we engaged the Education Advisory Board to bring their research experts to campus to talk about what they found to be best practices in higher education. It comes, of course, as I mentioned, after the Great Recession and when we have a different set of expectations for growing revenues. And frankly, for this campus, it comes after a very significant security event or events, and at a time when we have to rethink the way that we do fundamental aspects of security. So a host of environmental factors bring us to this point. Again, rigorous, if not laborious, selection process to get this consulting team. And now we're really ready to go and to make progress. The most important thing about the first phase of the project, which you'll hear more about, is that we get accurate and complete information. And so this is a dialogue that opens that conversation. There's a lot of other activity going on. But again, you won't make good decisions. They will be random. They will be randomly good if you don't have good information. So our first phase is really focused on accurate and complete information. So thanks so much for taking your time to be here and for providing accurate and complete information for our consultants. Any questions? Anybody? Great, thanks.
We wanted to make it pretty brief on the formal remarks and just give you a brief overview, and then we'll get into hopefully some Q&A and dialogue and answer your questions, which is really what we're here to do today, because we know that folks had a limited window of time to ask questions and give dialogue, even if you've been scheduled for one of those meetings. We have basically a two-phase process that we employ. As Beth already alluded to, we have phase one, which is really this current environment assessment we're underway right now. We have a methodology in place that we've used that Clint alluded to earlier that is intended to be very collaborative and very inclusive. So during this initial phase of the engagement, we really want to hear from as many people as possible. And we've put our information out there on interview outlines, we've put our information out there on questionnaires, et cetera. We also have the university has set up a dedicated web page, which I will hopefully provide a link to here up on the screen at some point. And we've also already established some other communications, which we'll talk about in a minute. So really quickly, you know, as far as the phases of the engagement, think of it as a two-phase process. The first phase, again, is this assessment that we're in right now. We're looking at what's going on the campus with regards to IT services. And that means IT, not just ITS. We really want to encourage people to think about this as broad a perspective as possible. So we're talking to folks from across the university. We're also going to conduct benchmarking. So there will be a benchmarking with other institutions. Those institutions are to be determined. There we go. Beautiful. Oh, you got it. Thank you, sir. So, and you've already done that. Okay, so here we go. This is on the website, which I'll allude to later, so don't need that. I already talked about project approach a little bit, but I wanted to, again, remind folks, when we talk about the technology, we really want to talk about it not just from the nuts and bolts, if you will, of the technology itself. We want to think about it, how does it impact, most importantly, the people, and the people that are supposed to provide the IT services, and the people that have to, are dependent on those services that are being provided. So think about it in that regard. Think about the processes that are in place or could be strengthened around delivering those services and how those services are identified. And then finally, of course, the systems themselves, the technology that we use today here at UNC Charlotte. How does that all work together? Because all three, there's, kind of, we consider it three legs of a stool, if you will. So we want to think about it in that way. And again, just to reemphasize, we feel we have a very inclusive and collaborative approach. And so we really want your input and feedback in this process. So as I mentioned, phase one, I've already talked about the kind of the Swiss Army knife up there. And so that's kind of what we're doing right now. This week we're working on that. And it's really a combination. Beth commented on the quantitative, on the data. And we do want that data, and we're collecting that information. We're also having meetings. We're having a dialogue with all of you and others. And that dialogue is qualitative, because we need both sides to make the decisions that we want to make in developing the IT master plan, okay? Subsequent and the next step in the process after this assessment phase will be to develop a catalog of the functions and services that exist today and discuss that with all of you. And then after that will be the benchmarking and the research piece. So think of the assessment piece as the internal and the benchmarking piece as the external. And then the final piece is the mapping and defining of gaps. So, the final piece, or the second piece, the big piece, is the IT master plan development. And that piece is the second phase of the project, and it requires a different approach. And Clint, could you come up here for a sec, please? Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Yeah, Dave's going to grab a drink, and I'll just talk a little bit about the second phase, which is the developing of the master plan itself. And that's a very collaborative process as well. And what we do is we have identified in the course of performing our current environment assessment, we've identified challenges, gaps, issues, which Dave had described. And then we work with a small core team from the university here that is in developing the IT master plan, establishing priorities, identifying projects that will make up the IT plan for the university. And it's really important to understand a few facts about technology plans. So one of the facts is that technology is constantly changing. I think we all know that very well. But an IT plan is only as good as the day it's printed, and the next day it becomes obsolete. So an important part of the process is establishing a process itself, a planning process for maintaining a technology plan. And I kind of view it as a scrolling horizon, if you will. for a plan. So there's a short term, a midterm, and a long term. And usually that long term is about a 5-year horizon, and identifying projects that are going to be undertaken over the course of that 5 years. And the immediate term is the current projects that are being worked on. So that's pretty clear. And then the midterm is what pulls that all together. That's the glue. So in developing the plan, we're identifying a plan that addresses that 5-year horizon and looks at the short term, midterm, and the long term. But it also is a process for planning itself and for sustaining that plan. So that's what all occurs. And on the slide here, you can see some of the components of that. Priorities, dependencies, considering organizational issues, considering staffing needs, considering what services are going to be needed in the future. So that's one of the things that's really important in technology, is identifying the future service needs in addition to what we need today. As well as some other things, policies, security practices, other procedures that are essential to making technology work. The outcome is the master plan. I think I described some of that and some of the components of that. You can see on the screen in front of you. It's going to have information that was developed throughout the course of the entire project. So that current environment assessment itself becomes part of that master plan. The benchmarking is considered. The priorities, resources that are going to be needed. Those are all components of that plan, and it really, the idea is to get to a roadmap for technology. So how do we get from where we are today to where we want to be as a university with the use of technology? Quick slide here about some of the components. I think we've talked about all of these already, but this just speaks to the timing to give you a general sense of that. We're doing the first phase now in January through March. By the end of the spring semester, we should have completed that current environment assessment, the needs assessment, and the benchmarking, and then we'll be moving forward into planning in the months thereafter. And the idea would be at this point to have a strategic plan in September or maybe October before that all comes together. So that's a little bit about the plan that we're going to be doing. Project communications, we've been trying to do a lot. Dave spoke to this, and Dave, do you have something that you wanted to add about that? Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. No, so thank you we are a team effort here. I think that's important to point out too, so I apologize for that. Yeah, communications. Hopefully all of you saw the announcement from the Chancellor's office that came out on January 8th. That was a campus-wide announcement. We also have the website, which I referenced, and which will be ongoing throughout the project. It's important. That'll be a good resource for everyone, and it'll track the timeline and give information as information is obtained and so forth as well. It's a good central place to go for additional information on the project. And then we also have the Knowledge Link is more of an internal, that's a SharePoint portal that our firm has developed. It's password protected, has security, and that's how we share information internally on the project with C.E. Pierce, who is not in the room, but he's the project manager for UNC Charlotte. And he is working very close with our team and coordinating this. He and Thelma, is Thelma here? Is Thelma in the room? Thelma's in the back. Thelma Marlowe, who have been wonderful in working with us and really putting together a tremendous amount of meetings and so forth. So they are our key contacts and the folks we'll be working with throughout the engagement. And then we have a biweekly status report that we issue to CE and the executive sponsors that just tracks our progress, what we've done in the past couple weeks, where we're going, how are we making progress on the deliverables, on the milestones, et cetera, that we've identified for the project. And then also, I think last and certainly not least, is UNC Charlotte. So those informal communications that take place with folks about, hey, I went to this meeting, did you hear about this IT master plan? These folks were down talking to us about it. Do you have any thoughts about that? And they're like, oh, oh, I heard that's just an opportunity. They just want to come in and centralize IT. And that's where we want to say, no, that's not what we're here to do. Again, that's not the intent. We're looking at everything. Everything's on the table for discussion. And we really want everyone to come into the discussion and in the dialogue and have an open mind about this, please, because we're trying to understand what the IT services are. And then finally, I think we've alluded to the structure with the sponsors and the manager and the steering committee. So just to recap real quick, we've already had a lot of meetings. We're going to have some more tomorrow. This is not to say everyone that we've met with, but we've met with a number of folks with all the colleges, student affairs, general counsel, athletics, students. We're actually having a student forum in this room afterwards. And we actually had some time with the chancellor as well. So we met with all the groups. And we, again, are trying to engage a wide audience here at the university. So, if there's folks that we didn't get a chance to meet with this week, we'll be happy to have phone calls. We can do some video conferencing. And, we'll be happy to meet with you offline or, subsequent to this week as well. So the window does not close on Friday, the January 25th. So we ran through that really quick. We hope you have some questions. We hope that you have some thoughts, either because you've been in a subsequent meeting or a prior meeting to this and you have some thoughts for us, or you have some unanswered questions. So please, we encourage an open dialogue here. We really want to hear from all of you and your thoughts maybe on the process to date, what your questions are on the methodology, or if you have a specific question or concern as well. So I think we can open the floor with that.
So Amy has a microphone. So
yep.
What we want to do is we're just trying to capture this. We want to get some questions on from the group here and topics and discussions. And one of the things that I know from working with universities is that there's a lot of perspectives, a lot of input about technology.
Can you, maybe too soon to say, but can you share, maybe after talking with some of those initial groups, maybe some of the broad observations that you have, or some of the low-hanging fruit, so to speak? I don't know if it's too soon to share that.
Sure. We really are just processing a lot of information right now, so we definitely don't want to jump to conclusions. I think we've heard a lot of positives about services here, and we've heard some challenges. So, I think some of the things we hear wherever we go are around communications, how those could be possibly strengthened. And that's not to say all communications are bad. So we understand that, that might be an area that could be strengthened. I think an area that is a focus here is how IT is funded. And I don't just mean ITS again, I mean IT infrastructure, IT resources, how are they funded? And is that the appropriate manner for those items to be funded going forward? Is that in the best interest of UNC Charlotte?
So this isn't a joke, but efficiency experts basically coming in and identifying, you've all seen the movie Office Space and the Bobs. You've been referred to as the Bobs, and so I really, if you can reiterate to people as you meet them that maybe clear that, yes. it may actually be exactly like the Bobs. Efficiency might be that we need to cut certain groupings or isolate or consolidate, but just, you probably have heard that before, but that's internally what we refer to you as. The Bobs.
Okay. That's good to know. But my first name nor my middle name are Bob, but no, that's okay. No, seriously though, I think every meeting I've been in, folks have gone, don't take away my IT. If there's, and I've met with a lot of folks outside of ITS. And I said what I already said today. This is not about just coming in and justifying a centralization of IT. So I hope we're not the Bobs by the end of this week. I'm sure we do typically come in and we are the Bobs at the beginning of the engagement. But I think we build a trust factor. I think other clients can speak to this, that at the end of the day, we're no longer the Bobs. So I wish I had a more snappy comeback but I can't remember any of the names of the Office Space characters, or maybe I'd give you a better analogy. But. It's one of the reasons why we had this meeting, I think, is to have another dialogue outside of the kind of the smaller meetings, to say some of the things we wanted to, make sure we get on the table. So, other questions? Come on, concerns, comments, sir?
Given your experience with this type of study, can you name a couple of campuses in the United States that you could hold up as being fairly efficient models of IT distribution and maybe like a benchmarking and so forth?
I think, it's funny. I mean, each campus has strengths and weaknesses. I don't know if there's any ideal. We've talked to, on different projects, we've worked on benchmarking with schools like Georgia Tech, University of Arizona. Who was the other one in that group? What's that? Leb. Oh, yeah, Case Western. Yeah. There's folks that are usually doing some stuff pretty well and some stuff not so well. So I'd hate to just say these guys do everything right. It's not typically the case. Case Western is, but they're a much different animal than UNC Charlotte. But they're doing a lot of things well, I think, in the IT arena, both with their organization and their project service portfolio and project service and the way they manage their projects. But
have you worked with anyone in the UNC system, any of our sister schools at all?
I do not believe so. Which could be good and bad. We have a little bit of a startup as far as our knowledge base. Although we're familiar and have looked at other schools, I believe, in doing some other research, probably. I know we have, but not any of the sister schools have we done an official engagement with yet.
I prepared my remarks.
Oh, okay.
I've been told that every one of your IT master plans that folks at UNC Charlotte have reviewed has included the recommendation to track staff time. Like you, I have a very diverse background, including consulting, vice president of operations and senior management, as well as in academia. So I offer some thoughts on that assumption of asking our staff to record its use of time. First of all, there are two primary reasons to track time. Number one, management thinks that the staff might be wasting it. Or number two, management needs to charge someone for that time, like lawyers. Unlike lawyers, UNC Charlotte has honest, hardworking, dedicated employees who generally try to do their best under the circumstances, and we are taxpayers who pay ourselves. Remember, many tasks take less than an hour or multiples of fractions thereover. So what level of precision is reporting is meaningful to management, and does it break the law of diminishing returns? Knowing how long people take to do something assumes that they always do it right the first time, that they don't waste time, and therefore they can't become more productive. Management assumes that by knowing how long things took, helps management know the future. Said another way, tracking time builds a track record for estimating future efforts because people are expected to improve their performance or innovate. Tracking time implies that people are not expected to think. They just do as they're told, so every time they do the same thing, it will take the same amount of time. That only works in factories and hand-picking kumquats or extracting hen's teeth. In intellectual efforts, they require thinking and planning and doing before each task because it also has variables. If it didn't have variables, it'd either be automated or robotized. Management assumes people always do the right things because management always clearly communicates exact expectations, metrics for success, and provides all required information, resources, and equipment to remove all potentials for wasted time or errors. Also remember, when people know that their performance, measured or not, cannot increase or decrease their compensation, their title, their benefits, or their job security, they're repulsed by being asked to do things that are obviously unproductive administrivia. Garbage in, garbage out. When staff don't know how information will be used by management, they use a survival technique called science fiction accounting to tell management what they think management wants to hear. When people do know how information will be used by management, they focus on what gets measured. Hence, if management says, tell us how to split your time between production, keeping systems running, projects, making the future better, and overhead, like potty breaks and smoke breaks, people will report based on their perception of what they prefer to do. For example, if two people do the same task side by side for the day, the one who likes the task will feel time flew. The one who doesn't like the task will feel like time dragged, and those two people will report the same time differently. Finally, financial planners and senior management on every company listed on the New York Stock Exchange tell us past performance is not an indicator of future performance. Accountants tell us where we have been. Neither one is an accurate indicator of future performance. So in conclusion, I'd like to make 3 comments. Number 1, I challenge Barry Dunn to use UNC Charlotte as an opportunity to experiment. Go beyond your accounting orientation and propose that UNC Charlotte focus on 1, the results of our efforts, not the hours of them, the value we add to the university, not the cost of our salaries, and 3, finding ways to work together across the campus and across groups, rather than comparing time numbers tied to silos of talent. If you accept this challenge, you will be a thought leader in moving higher education in the United States to a world-class level of competitiveness rather than perpetuating the current models of Wall Street tracking quarterly results. Remember, luck is laboring under correct knowledge, and I wish you luck.
Could you repeat the question?
The question was, are you going to recommend time tracking for employees?
I'm gonna start, but that is probably requires a twofold answer. So I'm gonna start the reply, and I'm gonna let Clint jump in because I know he loves these kind of questions. And so first of all, we're not going to develop we're going to develop something, but it's going to be in concert with UNC Charlotte. We're not telling the university what to do in a vacuum. We think we're thought leaders in IT master planning. And the way we do it is not based on how long it takes to make a widget. So I really do think we take a very personal and a value-based approach to the work that we do and the assessment we come up with and the plans that we develop going forward. And I think for the purposes of the spirit of the master planning that we do is more about developing, and you said it yourself, about thinking about the planning and the time and being thoughtful. It's more about that than it is about any particular one initiative or one change. So if we can develop, again, in collaboration with the UNC Charlotte community, a sustainable and actionable IT master plan, then we'll be successful. If we can give you best practice metrics that say you need to do a 180 change on X, Y, and Z, then that's good. But that's only, that's not the focus that we bring to the table, number one, and that's only one piece of it. So, anything else? Yeah. Okay.
Bob, I think you gave a great answer. And thank you for that question. That's actually the sort of thinking that we hope we start to inspire here as we're on campus. Not that we're trying to put a particular methodology or a particular focus. I think Dave made that pretty clear in it. But really getting people to think about collaboration, about how technology is used most effectively across the university. And one of the challenges in higher education in general is working across the various silos of within a university community. And that's the reason why this, the focus of our work is very much across the university, very inclusive. We really want people to understand this is the best opportunity to to make meaningful improvements and advance how information technology is used in all aspects, for classroom education, through online learning, if that be a factor, if it be administrative or other service functions of the university. Those are all important, and that's part of what makes technology so challenging in that higher ed environment. So it really needs to be collaborative. It needs to be inclusive. Planning is not necessarily easy, but it is also very achievable and doable. So actually, thank you for that. The points, and I want to get a copy of your remarks. We can talk. Yeah. Let's see some other questions. I just wanted to go back to the question about that we had earlier about for the Bobs, and had an additional thought on that. And one of the things that we are asking about while we're on campus here is what services people are using. And we've got one of our multiple questionnaires that we're using, asks for people to identify services that they use and where they use them from. Because one of the things we're looking to understand is what is most needed, and what services are people using today, and what services are people not getting that they need in the future or they need today. And one of the things that's important in looking at technology and the question of efficiency is, are there things that can be done better and more effectively and not duplicated? But also, are we doing the right things? And that's really important. And sometimes it's important to take a hard look at what things are being done today and what things perhaps should not be done, what tasks can be done differently, and how that allows you to spend time and resources where it's going to be more effective. So the question of, are we coming in as efficiency experts and to say here's a way to cut out certain roles or tasks or waste, that's not the focus that we're doing. But we do look at ways that things can be done more efficiently. I think that's really important. So hopefully that's a helpful addition to the question about the two Bobs. Other thoughts? We're starting to having some good points here. Yes.
Name's Hal Walter. I'm from Human Resources. I cover all the IT positions on the campus. Did one of these for ECU years back.
Okay.
One of the problems we have is rumor control. You guys normally stay ahead of rumor control because word's going to get out that there's duplication we might have to cut, or this particular area doesn't get paid more than it should be, things of that nature. You can do some kind of weekly report filtering down from Chancellor, down through Beth, letting people know we're just looking. We're not looking to cut. We're just looking. Because rumor control, especially amongst my IT people, will create interesting problems, and I tend to be a little protective of them.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's always interesting to hear the rumors that start that may have no basis or foundation, and as Bob can attest over here. We've got a couple of things that we're doing. So around communications, one is that we do have a steering committee that's established that's guiding this. This project actually was established before this this project has begun. We have we do progress project management status report every couple of weeks, which is really not about what our findings are, it's about the progress that we're making. There's, boy, you know, the points that I really want to have out there in the community is that this is a objective project that we're undertaking. It's not, you know, we're not coming at it from a particular perspective. You know, we're not a vendor of software, hardware, or outsourcing services, so that's important for the community to know.
That outsourcing thing, that would be important.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, we really, you know, don't come at it with any particular agenda, and I can't think of too many recommendations that we have all the time. And so, I'm interested in where the accounting one, the timekeeping one came from, because I don't remember that, but that's okay. I think we do have we have some website capabilities that, you know, we talked about and Dave shared in a previous slide. I think the whole communications is really important. So thank you for bringing that up, and we want to make sure we keep at that. So they're really, to the extent there are rumors, we should, you know.
There will be. You're here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just need to stay ahead of it.
Yeah.
Did you talk about the makeup of the steering committee?
The makeup of
Yeah, you know, as
Yeah.
far as it being cross-functional.
Yeah. So the steering committee is a group of. I don't know if we have that listed on the.
It's going to be posted.
On the website. So it's a cross-functional group from across. There's members from ITS, from distributed IT, from leadership. It's co-chaired by the provost and by Beth. We've got that's the makeup of the steering committee. Questions? Other thoughts? So communications is big. Yes, sir.
I'm interested to know how it is that you've handled the unique challenges of research and engineering computing at other institutions, and how you may look at those at this institution.
Yeah. So, good point. This is a research institution, and research and engineering are areas where you have different computing needs, different information technology needs, and different resources available sometimes. I mean, it's important to be able to be competitive at going out and obtaining those and getting the technology, you know, in. The approach to technology planning that we're talking about really allows us to recognize the differences that exist around the different elements of the campus of the university community. So the needs of research have got to be considered just as importantly as the needs of classroom education, for example, as the needs of administration and differently. It's certainly not a one size fits all across the university community. So as far as some of the things that that other clients have done, it has ranged the gamut from having the facilities, be it the desktop capabilities to supercomputing capabilities that are needed by those the research functions. So when I think of some of the other institutions that we've worked with in that area, that's been all part of the plan.
Can I add a couple of things?
Yeah.
So, one of the words that comes to mind when I think about what some of our competitors do in this space and what we don't do is prescriptive. So we're not coming in with a preconceived set of notions. I think that's important to understand. And then secondly is research a strategic priority of the university? How would you answer that? Yes. Good. So it's a priority of our IT master plan. Because what we're trying to do is develop an IT master plan that supports the strategic mission of the university, ultimately. So.
Hi. Those other institutions that you just mentioned, do you do some follow-up with them after you produce the plan? How satisfied? Would they refer you to a friend? I'm just curious.
No, do you want to? Yeah, I'll start it, and then I think we just, for recording purposes, we need to speak into the microphone. We have, well, Clint has done presentations with numerous previous clients on our strategic planning process at, national and regional professional conferences. So that in itself says that folks are willing to go in front of an audience and speak to the value of the plans that we've developed, number one. Number two, we use our references. We obviously used our references to come here to UNC Charlotte. So, and we stay in touch with folks to check in on their progress. And, the reality is you develop a plan a couple years down the road, something that you said 2 years ago in the initiatives, well, things change. Technology changes. But again, back to, I think I mentioned it earlier, that, initiative that sounded really good a couple of years ago, when it came time to start to implement that, there was a planning process, a framework in place to look at it and say, well, gee, that isn't quite the priority it was then. We're going to move on to some of the other initiatives perhaps in the plan. So again, building that sustainable framework, I think, is as important as anything. Yeah, we stay in touch with all of our prior clients and follow up with them on a fairly regular basis. So.
Yeah, one thing, we need an extra microphone is what we need. Some of the other, I think of some of the changes that some of our other clients have seen as a result of their technology planning. Changing, getting more technology into the right places. So, for example, implementing effective technology refresh programs, implementing a more effective organizational structure that deals with some of the silos of technology. One of the things that we've seen in clients is the need to be able to really focus on the technology community on the campus as an entire community, not just centralized or decentralized or individual pockets of IT. And that's been one of the changes that I've seen clients make, and I think of places like the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, that has made some changes in their organization of IT. And really the very effective engagement of the various operational departments, the colleges, the user community in technology. I think that's one of the things that is really important today in technology. It's not just something you can say, okay, this is an IT plan, it's an IT problem, they'll make it work, and if they don't, gee, I'll complain about it. That does not work. Technology, to be really effective, needs engagement. It needs that collaborative approach. And I think that's one of the things that I've seen when I look at other universities that we've worked with, that they've been able to address effectively. And sometimes, surprisingly perhaps, they have, surprisingly for members of the community, they've been able to address changes that they thought they couldn't address. Yes.
Could you address some of the changes that have been made effectively, kind of give us some examples of the needs that you have seen and how you filled those? Sure.
So, one of the ones I can think of is the whole question of centralized versus decentralized. And the perspective, the concern, the angst perhaps that, gosh, I've got a technology person who's down the hall who knows my department, who knows my application, who helps me, and I'm concerned that that's going to be taken away and it's going to be moved into some central facility. And it's that whole centralized, decentralized. I think that came up as maybe the second question that was asked, so I know that's on people's mind. It's a challenge in all universities. And I think that's a good example of something that I've seen a lot of fear about going into campuses, and a lot of uncertainty FUDs, fear, uncertainty, doubt, suspicion. And that effective planning helps to address it. Because what it does is it brings it out in the open and says, okay, what services are really important to be delivered close to the users or close to the department, and what services really should be consistent across the campus. And sometimes those breakdowns are things like security standards, for example. Everyone needs to use a password. Those are some things that really need to cross all of the departments and the silos, and some of those practices around how technology is managed day to day. Other services really need to be at the point where people are using the service, understanding the operations of a particular application or function in a department. So that I think is an example of one of those areas that I've seen that can be addressed effectively through a planning process like this. Is that helpful? Did I give you a bit of a sense?
Could you talk about, you were talking about technology. What types of technology have you seen that industry implemented? Aside from just password types of things, could you give us a broader perspective of what those types of things have been?
The types of technology that universities have been focusing on in different areas, perhaps. Sure, I think some of the learning technologies, some of the education technologies, very specific to departments, very important in how it's delivered. The question was asked about research and that type of computing. I mean, there are specific needs there for technology that need to be really addressed on that very localized basis. So that gives you a little bit of an example, and you can kind of infer some other things like accounting functions or whatnot that need to be really enterprise-wide, and it can be wasteful, if you will, to try to replicate those around in multiple areas on the campus. Other thoughts, questions? Favorite technologies?
I'm sure you've seen in the past that the silos occur because you've got some smart guy in a department who thinks he's going to do the best he can, would love to use ITS resources, but because of funding constraints or personnel constraints, they just don't have the resources to help. So what happens is you've got your silos building, an example, video capture, CCTVs, we've got NVRs all over this campus without a centralized data source to store that information. So I don't know I actually need an answer, but I want you to keep in mind that there are technology support analysts through all these agencies or departments that are just doing the best they can because there just isn't the support that they need to help them push through or a standardization in these technologies.
Yeah, and sometimes the one of the important points that comes out of a technology planning process is really focusing on, okay, let's get those resources where they are needed. I would say the question was asked earlier, any initial observations, and one of the things I've observed just in the last couple of days is that the university has actually been very willing and ready to take on some new things around technology, and perhaps at times taking on new efforts and without perhaps recognizing what resources it's really going to take to make it very effective. And that's not unique to UNC Charlotte. I can assure you of that. However, that's a challenge, and I think this is why it's so important to really focus on the technology planning process that I was describing at the beginning, so that you can direct your efforts and resources where it's going to be effective and make sure that you don't under-resource efforts. Okay. Thank you. Yes?
To echo what Mark was saying, often the challenge is more in central ITS that to make it an enterprise solution, it takes much more planning and support models because it's easier to spin up something smaller under a smaller budget than the enterprise level. So whether, in the end, if you say it's much more efficient to centralize it, the challenge is still there of how it can be done in a reflective, supported, timely manner. So getting that in the end as a recommendation hopefully isn't the only thing we're getting. How to implement it, what systems are already in place to do that. Otherwise, it's what we already know.
Yeah, I think that does bring up a good point. Oftentimes, technology can be much more effectively implemented on a very small, localized scale. So it's, and that, again, needs to be recognized. And maybe the simple fact is that's a great way to start with technology. And then, this is how we get to where we are today, is we implement something like that, it works really well, and we say, gee, let's do that across the enterprise. And all of a sudden, it becomes a bigger task.
Recommending you should do it, do you actually have solutions that you can recommend, or are you going to just say that would be a good thing to do? Because if that's the case, I will be disappointed.
Okay. How do you get from here to there? Yep.
A to Z.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're going to be doing, and we've done in other situations, but we're going to be doing is we're going to be identifying initiatives that need to be addressed. And then as we get into that planning phase, we're going to work collaboratively with people from, some of you in this room, I would expect, will be involved in that to establish, okay, here's how it's going to be implemented. Here's how you're going to get there. The levels of specificity will vary based on the initiative, based on the time frame. And we're not going to try to lay out technology that's going to be acquired 4 years from now, but we probably are going to be, we may lay out very clearly in that plan some technology that's going to be undertaken, or projects undertaken in the next 18 months. But we will try to also build the foundation for where technology is going in the future. And that's that concept of the scrolling horizon, if you will, of technology planning. So hopefully that's helpful. Again, I think people will see it unfold.
I think we talked about, in the phase 2 about some of the components of, initiatives and so forth. So it's always a balance between strategic and tactical. I mean, because in all honesty, what the plan is, it has strategic themes. It has alignment, hopefully, with the university's strategic mission and priorities. And we talk about all that, and that's all the high, stuff, and that's nice. And that's important because it sets the right tone. But we also develop initiatives for each of our strategic priorities that then get into, this is how much time it should take. This is how much it should cost. And it's not to the penny, but it's a starting point. And it is the beginning of that roadmap. One of the pieces that we didn't really talk about is, and it's really, this is way down the road, but what we call the initiatives matrix. And that's really the roadmap. That will give you on one page ownership of the initiative, timeline, prioritization, resources, and estimated cost. And those are always part of our master plan. And if you go out and Google us, you'll probably see master plans out on the website for University of Maine, for University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, for others. They may not put that piece out there because that's a little more sensitive. That's a little bit more specific. So you may not see that when you do go and get what's on the website. So that's important to understand too. So again, we don't want to be overly prescriptive because we're balancing what again, we don't want to come in with those preconceived notions, but at the end of the day, we got to make sure we don't leave you with something that's shelfware, that's not applicable, right? I mean, I think that's really fundamental to where we expect to get to. So, also, just to the lady's earlier point about, I mean, you're talking about some of the specific initiatives, general themes, training, what's going on training, what's happening to support training. And when we say training, we're not just talking about we're talking about both sides of the coin. The users, consumers of technology, do they have adequate training? Is there an onboarding process when a new employee is hired? Do they get basic training on technology? We'll ask those types of questions. Also with IT, what is the training budget for IT staff? Is that adequate? Are they getting the right type of training? Is it part of their professional development? So we'll be considering those types of things as well. So we still got, we wanted to break about 3:45 just because we have another group coming in, but that gives us 8 more minutes. So please, any other questions? Any other thoughts, comments, reactions to what you've heard today?
Also about customer service times.
Yeah.
We have a local student staffed help desk that responds to user issues, whereas there is also a centralized help desk that covers pretty much everything that you can think of. And requests that go to the central help desk are then distributed and everything. How do you handle that kind of, probably the big thing is the response time.
Right.
Is how do you decide how much resources to put into a local help desk versus a centralized help desk?
You know, that's where I think the benchmarking, the research comes into play, both best practice and what other folks are doing. For instance, I mentioned Case Western, and you know, I know Case Western is a different university, but when it comes to something like help desk, you know, they've done a lot of work in that regard about answering. Now, the approach they took, it may not be the approach for you folks, so I want to caveat that real quick. So, I really think it is, we do like the concept of kind of a single point of contact, you know. I mean, we want to know, because ultimately all of that data should be used. It should be analyzed, and where are the trends? What's, you know, gosh, are we spending 70% of our time on password resets? Is that, you know, who should be doing that? You know, how should that be delegated out to the help desk, you know, and what's the structure, what's the most efficient way to address that, so that other resources cannot be, you know, cut loose and sent to the curb, but to do more value-added projects to support other, you know, initiatives within the university. So, yeah, we're going to look at statistics and consider, you know, what's being done today, and help desk is usually a key area, because it's the front door of, you know, IT support, right? So, and ultimately, hopefully, it is coordinated in such a way that it then leads to information that informs projects and prioritization. So there's, you know, work tickets, and then there's projects, and those need to be differentiated as well. Does that help a little bit? Okay, great. Okay.
Can you talk about how, during the course of your assessment, you may coordinate with the UNC General Administration, sort of our state overseers? For example, I'm in financial services, and many of our applications, such as Banner, our accounting system, as well as our e-procurement system, we can't necessarily make decisions in a vacuum. They have to be somewhat in concert with what the system wants to do as well.
Yeah. First of all, we're not miracle workers, so I apologize, but, you know, things that happen outside, there's only so much we can do. And I know that the system plays an important role in some aspects, and that's the reality. But we're going to look at that. We've worked with Tennessee system, Nevada system, Maine system, New Hampshire system. You know, we worked with a number of different systems in the United States now, and others as well, Washington State. So we understand that dynamic. I think we want to lay out potential opportunities where you can leverage those resources, and also to understand where there may be opportunities for change, but obviously we're not going to necessarily be able to change anything at that state level. I mean, but we will look at that and consider that, because if we don't, then we're leaving out a big piece of the IT service portfolio, I think. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I apologize. I'm going to have to step out. I've got to go make some
Sure.
widgets. How will folks that you've missed this week get in touch, arrange
Yeah.
talks, because it looks to me like you've missed some big groups.
Okay. Not all the groups were on that list, so, but I would say either, Vienna, do you have a card handy maybe? You just, either Vienna or I can, yeah, so we'll make sure you get a card and then follow up with us with a phone call or email, and we'll make sure we see what we can do. And maybe we have already addressed that in other meetings that weren't listed or something as well, so.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Other thoughts? Was this what folks expected? I mean, it at least shed some light on maybe some of those questions or concerns? A little bit? Okay, good. Ongoing process. I don't think we answer everything in one day, but I do like the comment about the rumor mill, and we'll do what we can to stay ahead of it. I think it's not just our job, though. I think it is. That's why we have meetings like this, right? So that folks, you know, hopefully, as you talk to your colleagues, and yeah, I did go listen to Bob, and it was, you know, they did say some stuff that made some sense and other stuff that sounded like gibberish, but overall, I think they're on the up and up, so time will tell. But no, I mean, I think, you know, hopefully we've provided some clarity and understand we're at the beginning of a, you know, really the reason why it takes us 10 months to do this is because it's, number one, it's a lot of heavy lifting, but it requires some time, it requires some deliberation, it requires some thought. It isn't about coming in and punching off the checklist. It's not prescriptive like that. It's really about building some new thinking and new approaches. So I think that's important. The timing is deliberate as well as the process. So, and that's not very efficient necessarily, so I'm just, you know, not necessarily. Back to the efficiency expert piece, but thanks. With that said, thank you.